Good afternoon, everybody. We're just waiting for Councilmember Bonds, so sit tight and we'll get started shortly.
There she is.
Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry I was taking too much time.
How are you, Councilwoman?
I'm feeling pretty good, and yourself?
Doing well, doing well. And I appreciate you making time on a Friday afternoon, particularly with all of the juggle balls that you have in the air right now. And so on behalf of the leadership and the membership, thank you for coming out. So this is an opportunity for you just to kind of report out, where you are, what your hopes for, the committee and the council as a whole in terms of the housing budget. I know that we have shared our budget ask with you and your staff, as we have with other council members. Of course, by now, we've had a couple of weeks to look at the mayor's budget, but until we hear from you, we don't have a complete insight into where things may be going. So we would love to hear what your priorities are. We would love to hear from you where you need our support, the kind of issues that you think may unfold during the budget process, and all the stuff that makes us and you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for meeting with me. Your organization is so important to what we do with housing in this city, as you well know. So without wasting any time, I will just say that I was very pleased with the budget that we got from the mayor. I am, though, understanding that if we really are going to have an increase in the Housing Production Trust Fund, we probably could do with a few more dollars in that fund. Maybe not this budget year 22, but certainly 23. And so I hope that you will be pushing for that. I think we will need close to 400 million over the next 3 or 4 years. And so I hope that you will push for that. Secondly, as we look at the local rent supplement tranche, which is very good, and as your analysis says, that if we use the money appropriately, just based, I'll say very basically, we might get close to 1,000 units. And that would help with the number of units we need at 0 to 30%. However, we all know that that money kind of fluctuates from year to year because of the landlords will ask for a rent increase. And sometimes we end up with persons who are looking for, let's say, a 3-bedroom, or a family looking for a 3-bedroom, and a 3-bedroom in zip code 19 is not as costly as one in 24. And so those prices, that's what they are. They're prices that we're paying. And we don't restrict a party from where they are. Now, I'm not talking about the project supplement. I'm speaking of the tenant primarily. But all of that this is what I don't want to see, is that money is conveyed for a 3-bedroom, average 3-bedroom unit for a tenant voucher. And then it gets to the housing authority and it has to be more dollars have to go into it because of the location of the property is what I'm saying. So we just have to be careful of that. And I think while each of the authorizing agencies, the Department of Human Services and DHCD, will be able to manage their money when they send it over to the authority, what happens is a little more difficult. So, but I'm hoping that we'll have what we need. And so we may need to put more in there in the next cycle.
So well, that certainly is music to our ears, and we agree. And as you well know, because you've helped to keep the focus on this, is we've been trying to figure out how to right size that for a couple of years, and I think we're refining the focus. So we appreciate your attention to it, as well as your interpretation of what it means to get the subsidy where it needs to go and when it needs to go. So thank you so very much for that.
Oh, you're welcome. And you know, I did want to ask your group, what are your thoughts about the current levels or the buckets that we have in the trust fund? Because you recall, I moved the 0 to 30 to 50% a few years ago. Everyone was quiet about it, except many in your organization. And now the whole world is like discovered, you got to do 50% at 0 to 30. So I'm very hopeful that we will spend down more in that category. We clearly will not do 50% in this fiscal year, but we have the potential over the next 3 years to certainly get to 50%. What I wanted to know is, do you feel we need to specify the next bucket to be for 31 to 50%? Maybe it needs to be 30%. So now we're at 80, and then 50 to 60, 10%, and maybe the 60 to 80 remain 10%. What is your thought about that? I'd be very interested in learning.
So I know that we are good with the current buckets as you had configured them last year. It's something that we debated during the year and we followed its rollout. I'm going to actually ask some of our housing providers who may be on the webinar to enter any comments into the chat. So Councilwoman, it may take a couple minutes for some of it to populate. I know that we are good with the buckets as they're currently, and I think, you know, part of the challenge that I'll call it affectionately bucket moving invokes is, you know, obviously we have a core value of getting more money to the deepest subsidy needed, and with a focus on, you know, 0 to 30 housing. We think that's the most vulnerable. We, you know, and I get that the next rung up is almost equally as vulnerable, but I know we always get pulled into this debate about the lower middle class needing support as well. And then how do we get that continuum correct so that we are not completely devoiding the 50 to 80% bucket, or even 60 to 80%, so that we're not creating, a greater divide. And it's a choice, and it's also a challenge. Let me see, I have a couple of comments here. Cheryl Court says, don't forget about income averaging. And there's a separate question, which I'll hold for later, but I want to see if we can round out the conversation on the buckets to your satisfaction. And let me also just offer, Councilwoman, that since we're now clear what your thinking is, I'm also happy to convene some of our providers very quickly, amass some perspective for you, and get it to you early next week. So
that would be, yeah, that would be great. Also, my concern about public housing is very simple. We know that we need, as a community, to put more dollars forward on an annual basis. The authority can spend the money, and one of the traps that they're in now is the way in which their the financial process is. They have to send their contracts to the CFO, and the CFO has to approve it. And then it's my understanding DMPED gets involved because they're overarching of all of the economic development projects. And then it comes back to the CFO, and sometimes there are other things that they need to provide. So that's part of why all of the money has not actually left the door, but it is planned. In fact, all the contracts have been let. It's just a matter of getting the okay from the CFO office now.
got you.
So I know that they can do it. I know they can get the money out. I just wish we could come up with a little more money for that. And how would it be spent? It would be spent towards those projects that are on in the pecking order, which is that transformation plan. So that's just a thought.
There's another question, actually, too, around the acquisition of the Wardman Hotel site. I know this has been a floating crap game topic for you and for the members of the council, and I would imagine the mayor's people as well. I know that the range of inputs that we previously received have talked about the large number of affordable housing units that it could provide. Also, the opportunity to do some mixed-use development because of the amount of land. I'm just curious if you have any particular thinking about what we should do with that. And I know things will unfold, but would love to hear whatever you might have to offer on that.
Well, this was, as I said, I see the property itself as being dreamed. But it's my understanding that the bids are maybe already accepted from the private sector. And so we probably don't have the kind of option to maybe, if, for instance, we could use something like DOPA, or if we could just use a large tranche of even federal dollars. That being said, it just seems to me that the door is not closed. I hope it's not closed, because I think it does provide an opportunity for affordable housing, for middle-class housing, and I certainly would like to see that. I think making having mixed income housing on that site would be very, very helpful. So that's where I am on Wardman. Now, I don't know a lot about the terrain or anything like that. So, but I understand it's a big, beautiful acreage. So it certainly could lend itself to even, I had in mind a little village kind of concept, but anyway.
Well, for anyone who has gone there to a conference and walked the garden in the back of the Wardman Hotel, you do get this picturesque sense of the property. It is a little hilly, but nothing that a good construction crew couldn't manage. One question in the chat was, do you think there's any way that the July 20, I see two dates, 20th night auction might be delayed for the city to put together a proposal? You're telling us that the bids have come in and the executive branch seems to be processing an award.
During Polly Donaldson's testimony, I think that was probably the biggest clue that we have been given as to where the administration is. And therefore, I would think that we're listening, but there is no indication from our government that there are plans to assemble the dollars. Now, just so you know, I did ask the deputy mayor during his testimony yesterday, but of course, he was not testifying as deputy mayor, but as chief of staff. I asked if we could get, certainly if I could get some in documentation that would describe where all the federal dollars are going. And that is that $2.3 billion. I think by taking a look at that kind of information, it could inform us as to where there might be some resources that we could use. I think it's going to take some of the federal dollars, much more so than our local dollars.
There's another question that, and I think we've all been kind of had our possibility thinking tweaked with the influx of federal funds about how we might use additional funding to ensure that units remain affordable for 30 years. You know, extending affordability because of conditions of the housing stock and other market pressures and so forth.
Well, you know, most of the housing production trust fund projects, they are for 30 or 40 years. It is with the local rent supplement that is only 15 years. And it certainly could be extended, but we all know when we extend it, we still have that $1, and that $1, you know, we will get a diminishing return on numbers of additional units that would be available. But yes, that is certainly possible. I've heard from others who question, why do we have a 30-year or 40-year covenant? Shouldn't the covenant be shorter? Thinking about the lifetime of a family in one place. So just wanted to put that on the table.
So one other area, and you know, I should have said at the beginning of this, Councilwoman, as a tee up, you know, we, like you, are generally very pleased with the mayor's budget submission. In fact, you and I were at an event where some of the higher end stuff was rolled out, and it was a bit of a love fest moment for all of us who have been working really hard toward these goals. But one area that we do see a shortfall is in neighborhood-based services. The mayor's proposed 7.3 million. Our ask is 12 million. And I know that we talked about some of this when we were on the rental housing strike force. That when TOPA tolling, you know, ends, we're going to see kind of a flood of activity. And one of the things that binds that activity to its intended outcomes is the housing counseling and some of the other supports that tenants receive. We think that the need is going to require the organizations who are doing this work to probably staff up more than they've previously been staffed. And so I just wanted to highlight that for you. I know you've seen the budget ask that we've shared with you, but I'm just wondering if you have a view about what you see that need is and supporting that ask.
I do see the need, most definitely. I see the need, and I'm not quite sure where we can get some
Additional money.
additional funding at this point, because, you know, the budget is balanced, but, you know, there may be a way. I'm more than willing to hustle for more in that pot. Most definitely. We were just having a conversation about the eviction moratorium and what to really anticipate. If you recall, in one of the hearings this week, I was trying very hard to zero in what might be real numbers, so we would have a sense of volume of work that would be before us. And I think the Office of Tenant Advocate is now indicating that there may be as many as 10,000 cases that would need some assistance. And my attitude is that those cases, we've got to find a way for those cases to get into community, much more so than trying to do it in-house. And so that was my message to her. Let's get it to the community, because the community is the group of professionals that work within these neighborhoods all the time. So I'm hoping that that will be our strategy. And so I'm committed to trying to find you a little more gravy.
Great to hear that. And this is a question, and I'm going to phrase it a certain way, because I know that you have championed this issue. Other than you, who is the best point of contact to talk to about senior housing in DC? And I say that smilingly and lovingly, because I know this has been one of your bully pulpit issues over the last several years.
Well, you know, I think we all recognize that we'll be there if we're lucky. And so I think you can talk to all of my colleagues and they should have a clear understanding of what it means. But if you want to talk about this subject, it's sometimes hard to handle, because we say we have more than 110,000 known seniors at 62 and older, but we don't show it in what we are doing. It's hard to get to those persons who we call isolated, or those that never really utilize social media. They're not on the internet, and they pretty much keep to themselves. And so the real question is, how do we reach them? And I think the way we reach them is through people that they know and they trust. And so it really makes it hard trying to help them until they get to a point where they really need almost nursing home help. And it's very unfortunate, because we want to improve the quality of their lives. I've been in neighborhoods where there have been elderly women doing their gardening, and 2 years later I go by and they are no longer there. And when I first met them, they said, well, you know, we would not have to take care of this big house if there was some place where we could live with others that are like-minded, but we don't want to do steps, you know, that kind of stuff. So it's a challenge, and I think it's an arena that as a city we haven't given a lot of attention to. We have said, if you are poor and you need help, we build the 10-story building, put you in that, but there are seniors that need other kinds of living too. And I wish we would give a little more attention to it. But of course, you know how the housing market works. If we don't get these ideas from developers, we don't get other kinds of housing.
So there are a number of comments in the chat about wardmen, and they are leading me to say that, and Scott, I know you're on the call, we should check in with the administration and try to get a clear indication of what their intentions are. One thing I will say about the wardmen is if you have 30 people in a room, you have probably 28 different opinions on what should happen with the wardmen. But, and I'm sorry that I wasn't aware of the up to the minute of how things were moving. But to those of you commenting in the chat, we'll reach out because the ball is kind of in the administration's court right now. I mean, I think it will ultimately have to come through the council for some form of approval. But by the time it gets to that, you know, the die could be cast. I mean, that is the way it works.
Well,
and we'll reach out and see if we can find out, you know, what their intentions for what that development will look like. And we'll try to share what we learn broadly with the CNHED membership.
yeah, please do. I think that's important, but it was very clear from Polly Donaldson's perch that the city was not looking at this time. I suggested that the city could, it could gather a few investors and we would create some sort of equity pool. And we could get the kind of housing that everyone involved probably desired, you know, some market rate, some middle income, and certainly some 0 to 30 income, because we really do need them. And we need the units. We know that. That's number one. We need the income variations. We know that too. And we definitely are pressing for our very low income, extremely low income housing. So we know we need it. The question is, how are we going to go about getting it?
Got another question about the recommendations from the Limited Equity Co-op Task Force, and just wanting to know where you might be with the recommendations that the task force developed.
Well, you know, we immediately put in the budget a position to work with our cooperative community. And it's my understanding that the housing department is moving to actually, I guess, advertise the position now, finally. I guess COVID really affected the organization, but we were assured in the hearing 2 days ago that that's how they were moving forward. There are a couple of other provisions there and that I thought we really needed to focus on, and that is to have some sort of tax credit for those that are in cooperatives, limited equity co-ops. So we are trying to get the fiscal impact for that to see whether or not we can find actually in this budget cycle some appetite for helping us to make that real, even if it starts as a pilot and we can expand it.
And I mean, this is the age-old question about finding more money for public housing repairs. I know you just said your hearing. I know this is the never-ending story and challenge for the district as a whole.
Well, if you were on, well, the new acting director, Brenda Donnell, who has a stellar really history in our government. She's a fixer, okay? She indicated during the hearing that her resources were adequate for now, but she did open the door. She'd like to be able to come and get more because she anticipates getting all her contracts out and utilizing the monies that were allocated this year. They will not, of course, you know, go to Claridge Towers, which actually went through modernization in 2008. So there are 3 other projects that they will be working on to spend that money. And as I said, they have a list of actually 14 properties that are in need of great repair. So we're expecting that there will be an opportunity for her to ask for more money. if we could get more money now and have it there, I think it would make a difference. But of course, Brenda Donald did not ask for more at this time. She said she felt that they had enough. She's been on the job for 4 days. So in all fairness, it probably doesn't give her enough time to really dig deep.
Yeah,
But
I still want to know how they talked her out of retirement so quickly because she had just announced that she was going on to greener pastures, and then boom, and you're absolutely right. Brenda is a fixer. I know her from my days in the Gray administration, of course, followed her after that. So she'll get it right. She will get it right. And I did want to say that we do support your legislation on the limited equity co-op tax credit. That's something we followed very closely. Tax exemptions, I'm sorry. That's something that we followed closely and support that. Somebody is asking a administrative question, which is, when is the last day to submit testimony on behalf of public housing repairs? When does your record close?
I think our record it would actually close today. Let me explain. But I think we can certainly receive testimony on Monday. Tuesday, we have a legislative session, and then Wednesday, I actually am required to do the markup.
Okay.
So it's really, this schedule is very condensed, and it makes it hard, really. All of the committees will be working this weekend to try to put their numbers and programs in perspective. So
It's going to be a couple of sleepless nights for you, Councilwoman, I'm sure.
oh yeah, no, I can hang.
I know that you can. I've gotten calls from you at those hours of the night.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I'd rather get them at night than in the morning. So I appreciate those late night calls. You saved me from a couple of ambushes. Let's see if we have, if for-profit developers win the Wardman bid, the city has no leverage for affordable housing beyond the percentage provided through IZ. The rolling comments about Wardman suggest maybe you could forecast, Councilwoman, because I realize that right now the administration has jurisdiction over what's happening. And if I'm wrong, correct me, by the way, but it seems like the ball is in their court now to advance something, and that you all will likely be in an approval or disapproval posture. Am I getting that correct?
I think so. I think you're 100% on this. It is a decision that the administration would have to make, whether or not they want to get into this now. The need is there, as I said. So I don't know. And I don't know what the peculiarities of the deal would be. I think the starting bid is 100 million. And that may be something that causes folk to back up. But like I said, the key for me is understanding how we are spending this $2.3 billion, which is our government to decide. Not a lot of strings are attached to it. And so I think knowing more about that would be very helpful.
Yeah, and I promise the listeners, we will reach out and see sometimes the administration, particularly when you have different proposals represented in different bids, they don't know which one is necessarily going to win or land, but they may be able to share somewhere between a philosophy and a framework in what they hope to happen. And again, because so much attention is being brought to this, it's not that we haven't been paying attention to it, nor have we not been expressing opinion about what we think should happen, that is consistent with some of the points that are being raised in the chat. But Scott, let's see if we can get kind of an indication. Sometimes the administration will try to tell you things that comfort you without violating, their own processes. let's see if we can get something that gives an indication of where they hope this will go and what might forecast what a successful bid might look like.
Right, and let's not also use this time frame, this any ideas we have about how the Wardman property could be utilized by the government to really send a message that this is the only affordable housing that we're concerned with in Ward 3. There are many places where affordable housing can be all over the city, and it's time that we do the right thing. It's time that we help families to have an opportunity to live in high impact communities. And it's not just at the Wardman, the lower end of Connecticut Avenue. You've got the upper end of Wisconsin. You've got the middle side of Massachusetts Avenue. We have a lot of places that we should be looking at. And so I'm not sure where the government really is, but I think as it relates to the Wardman, but I think that the thought is all over the city and in other parts of 3. And I know 3 says that they don't have any place for new housing. And I'm not sure. If you come in my neighborhood, I thought I didn't have any more places for new housing, and somehow it is here. So I don't think that that's where we are as a community. I think we want affordability, affordable units all over the city, because our people are all over the city.
Okay. Another question is about HPAP. I mean, one of the things that we have been tracking, and we have home ownership groups as part of our membership as well, and with these very ambitious goals that we have for unit production, it does tilt a lot of our resources toward multifamily housing, multifamily rental housing. And there's some who think that our current configuration, as well as our current investment with HPAP, maybe not helping homeownership kind of keep pace with the market. So I'm wondering if you have any views about HPAP. The mayor's recommending 19 million. We're actually asking for 24 million for HPAP. A couple years ago, you changed some of the provisions within HPAP, which helped HPAP keep pace with the market. And I'm just wondering, are we at a point where we need to take another look because maybe the market has continued to outpace that in terms of down payment, both down payment assistance and repayment terms? Is that on your radar screen in any way?
There are a couple of things about HPAP. It was one of my favorite programs because I think it really does bring to light ownership and something that people can ultimately afford. I raised the ceiling from, what was it? I forget now. Well, years ago it was 30 and it went to 50, and then I moved it from 50 to 80. I'd like for it to be 120, quite honestly. And I would like for the floor to be raised. And I mean, if we're really serious about the marketplace, and maybe it's a temporary situation, because if the nation's economy goes south, then you can get far more for your money ultimately. But I think that this is a program that should keep up with the marketplace. And I think we have to put more emphasis on it. So if we could get 30 million in it, I think it would help a great deal. If the floor, instead of being like, I think it's The lowest is maybe like 14,000 if it were 20. Now, I must say that the mortgage banking community says, as we add the amount that comes out of that program on a household basis, the marketplace accelerates the cost of housing. So that's the one thing that we can't control. And so if we put more in, it's going to cost more to get to. And so somehow we've got to have an agreement with the marketplace that this is about specialized home ownership, and we need their cooperation. So that's why I didn't really, once I got that word back from the banking community, I said, oh, well, then I don't know if we are spending our money wisely, because the price is already inflated.
I'm sorry. So Gail Sonnerman is citing that there are 142 acres open in Ward 3. And then otherwise, we're looking at repurposing existing structures. And, you know, Gail, I would love for you to circle back with Scott on our team. Scott has been involved with helping with things like the comp plan and zoning and other things. I do think that there is broad-based support for Ward 3 affordable housing. It does come down to an issue of political will as well as resources. And Scott knows kind of what a lot of the existing attempts and plans that are underway. He may not know them all, but I know that Councilwoman Bonds has certainly been lifting that up and being very public in her support. Some of this has to show itself in the awarding of trust fund dollars and other planning things. I know that the Office of Planning has tried to make zoning more friendly for this purpose. I don't know where, but Scott, Gail, since you've made several comments, I would encourage you to talk with Scott and us and get an update so you can have a full appreciation. Councilwoman Bonds, the one area that I know is something that we all have been pleased with its early performance on is the Housing Preservation Fund. The mayor has proposed a level below, a little below what we think is needed. The mayor is proposing, I'm looking for my notes here, 17.7 million. And we're happy with the fact that there's a 5 million set aside for the limited equity co-ops in that. But we think with TOPA tolling that with the TOPA projects that are probably going to come online, that you know could be a little higher. I know last year you fought to get more money in the preservation fund as well. Yes. So I just wondered if you have any comment about that.
Most definitely. And if you can come up with 5 million more, we will certainly get it in. And I think you'll be applauded for it because it is a very important fund. I mean, 3 for 1, I mean, it really, that's exciting. And TOPA, as you know, is at this point, we probably need to reevaluate how it operates. I think it could be a little more effective, quite honestly. We did a little work in my early years on the committee, trying to adjust, you know, timelines and what have you, make it reasonable. But in other parts of the world, and certain world being the U.S. and other states, states, I think we should use that term frequently because whenever they're collecting data about the United States, they treat us as a state, you know, so that's why I'd say that. But in other states, the process is a little different. It's shorter. The time frame for ownership moves a little faster. And so we probably need to do that. In the city, we've always want to make sure that we hear from our residents, and particularly those that are affected. And I don't discount that, but we need to speed it up a little bit so that it can be realized a little faster, and so that deals don't get away from the tenants. But I think we have to look at that.
So at the beginning of your comment, were you encouraging us to go beg from other committees?
Yes, yes. And you know, there are some very wealthy committees.
I just want you to know I didn't miss that, okay?
Yes, yes, please push forward, definitely, okay? And help us also find the money for the NGOs and the work that they do. I think those two, if we could get a little more there, of course, I want more in public housing, but I think we're going to get a little more. That is, I think it's going to get, because remember, we have this federal money that for the most part, it can be, I think, extended all the way to the 24 budget. So there will be some money. In other words, this federal allocation that I'm asking for, it would show how much is being reserved for the 23 budget and the 24 budget. So I think we're going to get there on that.
So I do not see any more questions in the chat. We are almost at time, but we do have time for you to make any closing comments that you would like to make, any marching orders for us in these days and maybe weeks that we have in front of us. And just to give you, we have sent our budget ask to all the council members. We've begun to have our one-on-one meetings with council members. We are meeting with both Chairman Mendelson and the council budget office as well. And because so much of our stuff loops through your committee, I will circle back with you and let you know what I'm learning, what I'm hearing, so that we can do as we always do, which is to figure out how to get, as I always lovingly say, we are sometimes dragging dead bodies over finish lines, but how to get as much as we can over the finish line. I think that we are fortunate to have worked to a place where we are not arguing about whether, but arguing about how. And all of us deserve some credit in that journey. It's a different conversation, as you well know, and as you have enjoyed with us. So please, any closing comments you'd like to make, anything you'd like to lift up as we wind down?
Well, I would. I want to lift up your organization and you in particular, because I feel very comfortable being very frank with you. You're trustworthy, and I try very hard to work on behalf of our housing community, and that includes our tenants as well as our landlords, and certainly our developers, and even those that are working on ownership models. Chris Donald will tell you over at the Housing Finance Agency, I'm on his case. I'm now for a CNHED. No, I'm into the point system that he uses. Okay, so I mean, I'm trying my very best to understand many aspects of housing, so that if I can have any input in anything, that I'm there to do that. Money is the key, but also making sure that we are building quality housing is equally important. So please stay vigilant, and let's make sure that we spend this money very wisely, get as many units from it as we can, but let's make sure that the mix that we do really is going to benefit the community. And at some point, I hope that your organization can a look at housing over the next 10 years. We need to do that. I know the comprehensive plan has its role, but in looking at housing over the next 10 years, it can help us identify some trends that maybe aren't going to work to the advantage of all of us in the community. And I know that's another, put it on your list, and I'll figure out how to put that in maybe I can get that in the budget. I don't know, but we'll see.
Well, I want to thank you, and I also want to tell you how fortunate we are to have the kind of relationship with you that we do. When you say that you can be honest with me, just so everyone knows, that means that there are times late at night where Councilwoman Bonds will literally cuss me out. And I mean that in the most loving way. What I like about it is the transparency, and between us, we don't have to guess where each other's coming from. And I will also publicly say that in the years that we've worked together, you've kept every promise that you've made. When you couldn't make a promise, you've said you couldn't make a promise. And we've never had to guess about what was going to happen, excuse me, from your end. We've watched you fight and win, and we've watched you fight and lose. But we've done it together. And I always appreciate the fact that you're open to our thoughts, because I think that's where the work gets generative. So we consider you a champion and an ally, and look forward to working with you, not just through this budget cycle. I will say one last thing about your 10-year challenge. One of the things that I have been saying for years is that despite the fact that we have goals and we have political will, we have nation-setting precedent in investments, we really still do not have a comprehensive affordable housing strategy for the city. And I think that that is a worthy note that you end on, challenging us to develop such, because I think that makes the framework of pursuit so much easier. And so duly noted. I can't speak for the entirety of the housing field or industry, but I want to say challenge accepted. And so something, even if it's in the form of asking for support for the work, will come to a neighborhood theater near you soon.
All right, and we will be ready. I may even have something that we're looking at already, but thank you very much. I really feel that that kind of strategic, or really just that kind of white paper is really needed, because this is a big enterprise now. And when I tell people around the country the value of our budget, I was at a conference and I was mentioning, well, we are $15.3 billion, and they're like, okay. And these are representatives of other cities, and they never saw the District of Columbia like that. And so this is a lot of money, and it affects a lot of people. And we want to use it the best way we can. So this is just a vision I have as, someone who cares about urban growth and development. So,
well, Godspeed in your deliberations in the days and weeks to come. And as I said, we will stay in touch about what we're learning from others and make certain that we are aware of your learnings as you engage your colleagues and have to make your very challenging decisions. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you all. And I hope I didn't bore you. I've learned to talk like Steve. I've learned to just go on, but it's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you. Bye.
You should have never said that in front of my staff.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.